Hello students, this lecture is about neuroglia. Neuroglia are the supporting cells of the central nervous system, of the nervous system in general. Now remember, we're going to have two principal cell types. There are going to be two main cell types in the nervous system. One is going to be the neurons. And the neurons, these are the cells, they're actually excitable. These are the cells that will be carrying an electrical charge. They will be carrying an electrical impulse to various regions of the body, as well as carrying electrical impulses throughout the neurons of the brain. And we'll talk quite a bit in detail about those neurons. But before we talk about the neurons, we're going to talk about the neuroglia. And the neuroglia are supporting cells. These are cells that will support the neurons in their function. And we have several neuroglia. We have astrocytes, microglia, ependymal cells, oligodendrocytes, satellite cells, and Schwann cells. And we'll go through each one of these and their function that they play in the nervous system and their role in supporting the neurons. The first one and the most abundant are the astrocytes. And their function is to support and brace and kind of protect the neurons. They will interact with both the neurons and the capillaries. They're also involved in maintaining the correct chemical environment of the nervous tissue. The chemical environment of nervous tissue and the neurons is going to be very important, because by keeping the chemical environment right, that will allow us to have the right concentrations of sodium and potassium to allow the neurons to have an electrical charge and be able to transmit electrical impulses. They're also involved in capillary permeability. They are involved in guiding the migration of the young neurons. And to some extent, they're even a little bit involved in information processing in the brain. And so here we see an astrocyte. Here is a neuron. Here is a capillary. And here are the astrocytes. Notice the astrocytes completely surround the capillary, so that anything moving out of the capillary and to the neurons, into the nervous tissue, has to pass through the astrocytes. And so the astrocytes act to protect and make sure that only the right ions and the right nutrients are actually going and getting to the neurons. They'll also protect things like bacteria or virus from getting to those neurons. Notice also that the astrocytes they're connected not only to the neuron but also to the capillary, so that the astrocytes are holding the capillaries in position next to the neurons to allow for the proper nourishment and to control the correct chemical environment. Next are the microglia. The microglia are the immune system cells of the nervous tissue. And the microglia, these will be the cells that will destroy any microorganisms that get into the neurons and get to the neural tissue. And then if there's any kind of damage to neurons, it will be the microglia that will clean that damage up. And here is a microglia right here. Notice again they're associated with the neurons. Notice it has these appendages. And again, the role of the microglia, it has an immune system role. It will phagocytose foreign debris and foreign objects and help the neurons to maintain good health. The next cell is the ependymal cell. The ependymal cells, they will line central cavities of the brain and spinal cord. In the brain and spinal cord, we have cavities within the center of the brain. They're called ventricles. And then all around the brain, all around the spinal cord, there we have a cavity that is filled with cerebral spinal fluid. And that has very important functions in terms of essentially keeping the brain and the spinal cord in a state of buoyancy. It adds a form of protection against shock and against trauma. And the ependymal cells, they will line those fluid-filled cavities, and they will help to circulate that cerebral spinal fluid around the brain and around the spinal cord as well. The next type of cell we have are the oligodendrocytes. And the oligodendrocytes, they will form something called myelin sheaths. And myelin sheaths act as insulation that surrounds the neurons, and that helps in the transmission of electrical impulses and information processing. So here is the neuron right here. This yellow structure right here is the axon of a neuron. And then notice the oligodendrocyte has wrapped itself around that neuron. So literally the oligodendrocytes are forming these myelin sheaths that act as insulation around the neuron. And those myelin sheaths will be very important. because it's because of that myelin sheath, its insulating effect, that nerve impulses are fast and move throughout the body fast. Now we also have satellite cells and Schwann cells. These are found in the peripheral nervous system, and their function is the same as the oligodendrocytes in the central nervous system, is that the satellite cells and the Schwann cells, they will form an insulative barrier around the neurons. And that insulative barrier, this myelin sheath around the neurons, it is very critical. We'll be talking about it more as we get into this chapter on neurophysiology. But the myelin sheaths, these insulative barriers, they allow for the electrical impulse literally to jump from what is called node to node to node, and it greatly speeds up electrical transmission. In fact, in the disease multiple sclerosis, where you lose control of that nervous system, multiple sclerosis, in that case what happens is the myelin sheaths are destroyed. Thank you.